Daedalus was a highly respected and talented Athenian artisan descendant from the royal family of Cecrops, the mythical first king of Athens. He was known for his skill as an architect, sculptor, and inventor, and he produced many famous works. Despite his self-confidence, Daedalus once committed a crime of envy against Talus, his nephew and apprentice. Talus, who seemed destined to become as great an artisan as his uncle Daedalus, was inspired one day to invent the saw after having seen the way a snake used its jaws. Daedalus, momentarily stricken with jealousy, threw Talus off of the Acropolis. For this crime, Daedalus was exiled to Crete and placed in the service of King Minos, where he eventually had a son, Icarus, with the beautiful Nocrate, a mistress slave of the king. Minos called on Daedalus to build the famous labyrinth in order to imprison the dreaded Minotaur. The Minotaur was a monster with the head of a bull and the body of a man. He was the son of Pasiphae, the wife of Minos, and a bull that Poseidon had sent to Minos as a gift. Minos was shamed by the birth of this horrible creature, and resolved to imprison the Minotaur in the labyrinth where it fed on humans, which were taken as quote-unquote tribute by Minos and sacrificed to the Minotaur in memory of his fallen son, Androgynous. Theseus, the heroic king of Athens, volunteered himself to be sent to the Minotaur in hopes of killing the beast and ending the human tribute that this city was forced to pay Minos. When Theseus arrived at Crete, Ariadne, Minos' daughter, fell in love with him and wished to help him survive the Minotaur. Daedalus revealed the mystery of the labyrinth to Ariadne, who in turn advised Theseus, thus enabling him to slay the Minotaur and escape from the labyrinth. When Minos found out what Daedalus had done, he was so enraged that he imprisoned Daedalus and Icarus in the labyrinth themselves. Daedalus conceived to escape from the labyrinth with Icarus from Crete by constructing wings and then flying to safety. He built the wings from feathers and wax, and before the two set off he warned Icarus not to fly too low, lest his wings touch the waves and get wet, and not too high, lest the sun melt the wax. Unfortunately, Icarus soon forgot his father's warning, and filled with the exhilaration of flying, he flew too high and too close to the sun. The intense heat melted the wax on the wings. The feathers came loose. A few minutes later, poor Icarus plummeted down into the sea and was drowned. Daedalus was struck with horror, but there was nothing he could do to save his son. Aggrieved at his loss, he named the sea spot where his son had drowned, and the close-by island after his name. The sea was named the Icarian Sea, and the island was named Icaria. Some say at the time Icarus fell into the sea, the mighty Hercules was passing by, and he gave the fallen Icarus a befitting burial. Berating himself for his tragic loss, Daedalus continued to fly towards Sicily, where he sought refuge in the court of King Cocalus of Camicus. With the king's help, he constructed a temple dedicated to Apollo, and, as an offering to the god, hung up his wings for good. At Crete, an irate King Minos seethed and fumed over Daedalus' incredible escape. The only thought on his mind was to recapture the skilled artificer and bring him back to Knossos. Minos knew that Daedalus would have disguised himself to avoid recognition, and therefore hunting him out would be no easy task. However, he did know that the artificer couldn't refuse a challenging riddle or a puzzling task. Minos set out from Crete in search of Daedalus, and wherever he went, he offered a handsome reward to anyone who could run a thread through a spiral seashell. He knew that this was a very complex puzzle, and Daedalus would be challenged to solve it. One day, Minos reached Camicus, and announced the same reward and task. Many people came and tried to solve the puzzle, but had no avail. The news reached King Cocalus, and he immediately asked for Daedalus, for he knew that if anyone could solve the puzzle, it would be him. His old age hadn't affected the brilliant mind of Daedalus, and when he saw the puzzle, he knew exactly what to do. At one end of the seashell, he placed a drop of honey, and then tying a string to an ant, he let the insect in from the other end to wander through the myriad spirals of the shell. Drawn by the sweet smell of honey, the ant emerged on the other end, stringing the shell through and through. Minos knew that he had found his man. Immediately, he demanded that the wily old fox be handed over, but Cocalus had other plans. He coaxed King Minos to stay a while in Camicus to rest from the long trip. Seeing no harm in it, Minos consented and waited while the chambermaids were getting his baths ready. In the meantime, Cogollus's daughters, who for years had been charmed by Daedalus's inventions and stories and couldn't bear to see him taken away, conspired to kill Minos. When it was time to take his bath, they poured scalding hot water on him. In his soul, this could have been the revenge of Daedalus. He saw the death of the man who led, in some point, to the death of his son. Knowing well that his disguise had been seen through, Daedalus decided to leave Camicus, much to the disappointment of the king and his daughters. He was last seen in Sardinia, in the company of Icarus, who was nephew to Hercules. Since then, no one knows what happened to this great engineer, what places he saw, what inventions he created, what miracles bore his mind. Today, Daedalus represents for us a brilliant person who had been cursed to suffer because of his special talent. The peak of his misfortune was living with the guilt that he caused the death of his son.